30th of October 2021. I have to remind myself that it's not last year or next year that we're hoping for. But this is my privilege to be your moderator tonight. I'm John Dallas, the chief cook and bottle washer around here. And we're really delighted that you're here. If it were sun shining out, this is what the building would look like. And for those of you who are here for the first time, this is very much a retreat center for people who are elsewhere, and they trek all the way out here from the city. It's so far, 20 miles, 24 miles. You'd think they were going to Iowa. But very much an opportunity for people who are in other parts of our region, other parts of the world really, to get away and spend time here at Enclave Learning and Earning Center. And here we really believe that leaders land to take off. They come here and study great things, as you'll hear in a second, and then they take off to higher heights. Now, since we're so close to O'Hare, and periodically it sounds like there's a plane landing on our roof, I think they take this motto too seriously. So the pilots are saying, let me land there before I take off. No, that's not the plan. We are marking tonight the 4 years since the building's dedication and the ribbon cutting for this great building, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, not much. But it's interesting to look at this wonderful picture, and off to the left of your screen, of course, is Trustee Lisner, who's here tonight and right up front with us, and he'll be speaking in a few minutes. And it's just a fascinating photograph that in 4 years, all the things that have happened. By the time we celebrate our 5th anniversary, 40% of our time will have been in the COVID pandemic. So that's a pretty large percentage of our 5 years in terms of operating at the math was done properly. So we are absolutely thrilled to say that your confidence in what we're doing is why we keep it up. The people who keep coming back, and even if they don't show up, they call in, they text, and they communicate in some way. So the idea for this building, and I just want to give you a little bit of background, for designating the building to house the curriculum that we were going to teach at O'Hare's Admirals Club Executive Conference Center, as MIT and the University of Chicago have been doing for years, exchanging thought leaders between those two great universities, back and forth between Logan's, Admirals Club, and O'Hare's. So we came up with the idea in collaboration with the University of Chicago to do this in 5 cities, counting Edinburgh, Scotland, and keep that city in mind, because we're going to talk about it in a second. But as we were presenting this to Ray Rubbel, who's the village manager for Elk Grove Village, he said, well, I have access to a building, and then you won't have to deal with TSA, and you don't have to deal with all the security issues of moving people in and out of the airport. And I jumped at the opportunity. And then I walked into this building and came close to walking out, but we didn't. We stuck with it. But in February of 2017, Mayor Johnson, all the trustees, and the leaders of Elk Grove Village voted or endorsed for the formation of a public-private partnership. And again, this was Ray Rummel's formulation of how a village, how a municipality would be able to work with a nonprofit foundation and with a team of coaches and speakers. So we are delighted that after all this time and after all the things that we've done, the Elk Grove Village Business Leaders Forum, of which Trustee Lisner is the chair, are the generous underwriter of most of our programs here. The municipality, Elk Grove Village Bank and Trust, which is part of the Wintrust family, and Enclave Learning and Earning Center, which is the not-for-profit entity that is the managing partner. I'm happy to say that Comcast Business has this building well wired, so every one of the floors has a different system. They're high-speed internet. So check in on Facebook, please, or on Twitter or whatever the social media, and just let people know you are here. When funders look at us as prospective recipients of grants, they check our presence online. And one person said, boy, you're really big on Twitter. What's the rest? I said, I don't have a staff. I can't keep up with all the social media. But please feel free to check in. I'd be grateful. Kevin Morrison and Dr. Dennis Steer, 2 of our county board commissioners who are really active here since day one. Dennis Steer was in that ribbon cutting photograph. He's been a friend and a client of mine for, I guess now it's 12, 13 years. Wonderful public servant. And to all the individuals in this room who volunteer to pour wine and to name tags and all the great things that happen in this building, tidying up, messing up, all those good things that we do as a community. But all that time and effort and other resources, very important to us. So on the 3rd of March, Elk Grove Village Bank and Trust, which is the Wintrust part that I mentioned earlier, they handed the keys to the building to the village. And then, of course, the village quickly handed them over to me and said, here, go for it. But as Josh and I started this process, while the building was being cleared of debris, deep cleaned, and I mean deep cleaned, repurposed, redecorated, refurbished, rebuilt, and all these things to make ready for visitors from next door and from other nations. And so from the very beginning, this has been a local to global model. And in a second, we'll talk about what the differentiators are. But we immediately started hosting introductory tours and educational events. We didn't wait. So the place was dusty, but we thought we need to get people in here. Much to my surprise, if I had to do that over again, people who were here when it wasn't finished would make comments like one fellow from Schomburg said, bring me back when you have something to show me. I thought that was remarkable because I was taking him on a tour and saying, here's where the stage will be. And I said, well, all I see is the teller window after the drive-through. And so I got a sense of the problem of visualization. So we now have a lab here about visualization. But we immediately, we didn't stop. And then Josh just brought so many organizations through here, just about every organization around the O'Hare area. By the date of the ribbon cutting on 12 October 2017, many dozens of meetings have been held here, and we, without charging, we hosted different organizations to have their board meetings, their wine and cheese gatherings, things of that nature. But by the time we cut the ribbon, hundreds of people had been through here, and it was exciting to have that happen because by the time we cut the ribbon, we knew we had something good, as Marie and all of us can remember. But each February, instead of focusing on our historical growth, which is a very important thing psychologically as well as organizationally, instead we're going to focus on February as our anniversary because that's the time that the Board of Trustees and the Mayor unanimously voted to approve the public-private partnership. So from my vantage point as a business person, that's really the beginning. So it's the 5th anniversary celebration will be celebrated on the 16th of February, and all these wonderful trustees will be here. I hope even Nancy Zarnick, who is stepping down in November, and we'll be honoring her in November here at Enclave. But we hope she'll come back in February. So here's your invitation. It's at your seat. Make sure you mark your calendars. So don't miss this, and make sure you bring people. It'll be a repeat of the ribbon cutting in terms of the elegance and the dinner buffet that we had and the entertainment. But I'm hoping to get the same harpist that we had, which would be nice. She was spectacular. And I think, if I recall, Sam, you were fond of that harpist from the Drake Hotel. You remember her?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, she was remarkable. She showed up in a beautiful black gown and diamonds and sat on the stage with one of the most exquisite gold harps. And it was such a great way to wind up the evening.
I remember walking in and walking out right away. I thought it was in the wrong building.
Well, Sam and I were talking because from the different buildings I've opened over my career, that was a standard that I had learned in my New York and Washington D.C. days, and then we've been to a lot of ribbon cuttings. They don't do it quite that same way, do they? So we were trying to set a standard, but it didn't quite take yet. But we are grateful, truly grateful for Comcast to be as active as they are in terms of underwriting the system here. And as I said earlier, if you would be kind enough to check in. We have a very active Twitter following. So over 12,000 people are following us on Twitter. And the engagement levels have peaked over the summer. And I'll tell you why in a second. But one of our tweets got earned over 60,000 impressions, which for 12,000 followers is a lot of impressions. So, and I'm really glad that Ross is here, Channel 6. Channel 6 is near and dear to our hearts. Those of you who live in Elk Grove Village, you watch it. I'm sure you watch it primarily to hear a trustee listener give his enclave report, I hope. And so if I understand Ross correctly, that this will be videotaped tonight, then broadcast in November? There we go.
Yes.
And then online thereafter, if I heard that correctly. So what I want to really make sure in terms of the honesty and the clarity of this is that you are why we gather. We're not here for any other reason than the interaction with the value to you. And so please come back and please bring people that you know who would benefit from an organization where we focus on the development of the individual. And why we do this is really an important thing to remember in terms of how it's characterized. That the quality of our thinking, especially these days during the pandemic era where our minds have been altered, but the quality of our thinking and the range of our thinking ability really has an impact on the quality of life for this wonderful phrase, for one and all. In other words, the person who's developing these new thinking skills benefits. The children, the families, the colleagues, the people at church or synagogue, wherever they might be, they absolutely benefit. So it is a for one and all benefit. But socioeconomic benefits of better thinking are limitless. We have to understand this. Now, the next phrase that you're going to see on the screen is the one that Josh and I have discovered that almost no economic development person in America is thinking about or using, but the minute they hear it, they go, ooh, how did I miss that logic? Which is, from neighborhoods to nations, mindset development is human-centric economic development. As you grow the mind, you're growing the economy. People will spend better, save better, do different things better, invest more effectively. They might start a business once they understand through the thinking methodology that is taught here that they have the capacity to do all those great things. So it's a fascinating concept that mindset development is the humanizing element of economic development. And why do entrepreneurs and other leaders come here, and why would Elk Grove Village support the coursework in this building? Better thinking, better outcomes. The logic path is solid. We've known this for years. Ironically, very few schools teach thinking. There are more doing it, critical thinking in particular, which in 2022 will be our primary focus in our curriculum. And stronger leaders, in terms of their thinking, stronger communities. Whether that community is the globe or it's your neighborhood in which you live. The logic is so strong for a municipality, for a federal government, to say, we've been paying attention to teaching people how to calculate their profit and loss statements, their EBITDA, their tax advantages, their SBA loan applications. We're spending millions and millions of dollars helping people do those kinds of things, but we haven't given a cent or a second to the idea of helping them think better and use the value of their minds. So here we call it venture critical mindset development for job creating organization builders. If they created one job, that's job creation. And as I think you know, Illinois' economy, especially Chicago, 72% of our economy is based on small business, not big business. We have almost no big business in our region at all. Only 8 of the Fortune 500 companies are based here in the Chicago region. But this is all coming out of a focus on self-awareness, other awareness, and venture awareness. As you go through the programs here, suddenly you realize that your venture has more dynamic qualities to it. Your venture has some things that you could grow into that if you hadn't thought a certain way might not have occurred to you. That you need new people, a different type of person, a different type of mind. So building from the inside out, leaders and other trusting individuals, they influence. And when, in this building, when we talk about it and we mean it from the heart, if this helps you at home with your kids, with your grandkids, with your nieces, your nephews, your next door neighbor's kids that you babysit, whatever it is, great. Let's pass on this focus on thinking. And so on your seats is an overview of the program, very quickly stated what it is, and then on the back of that overview is an application for membership. Because of COVID, there has been no fee. for the past almost 2 years. And anybody who joins for the ridiculously expensive $10 a month, their membership will go straight through 2022. So you're more than welcome to sign up and become a full-fledged member, and the benefits of membership are all on our website. So coming up on our calendar of events into the new year, and I just want to say up front that any ideas that anybody has for a speaker, for topics, or special events are more than welcome. I got a call today from Silicon Valley, and Peter Kestenbaum, who wrote the foreword to a book that I wrote, one of the most remarkable Harvard scholars on the philosophy of business. Peter is an author of seven books. And again, this fellow called me today, and I couldn't quite understand what he was talking about. He was talking about his organization. I was very impressed. Peter wants him here to speak. So if I know Peter, he'll give him the airline ticket to get him out here. So I was very impressed with the guy. He himself has written 5 books. But what I didn't realize is he's spending more time with my friend Peter than I am. So I got jealous. And Peter, when you hear this on videotape, to you and Patty, my very best. And Peter and I worked very closely together at the University of Chicago, where I chaired the Leadership Arts Certificate Program for the grad school. And we flew him in from California. He was Pepperdine University's #1 professor for years, and Harvard PhD, and just a brilliant guy who loves Enclave, just loves it. So he keeps sending us speakers. We'll be delighted. So in a few minutes, we're going to hear a wonderful person named Richard Mikel, but we're not quite there yet, Chief Richard Mikel. But I do want to quickly say, and a lot of people don't know this, that every single week at 8:45 in the morning, we get online together. And once a month, we do it here in the building together as well as online. But this is part of the Oak Grove Village Makers Want Leadership Development Program. I cannot find another community that's doing this. I looked. Even in my years down in Washington, D.C., I was enthralled with Fairfax County's economic development operation because of their predominance in technology based on their contracts with the federal government. And they're not doing it. They're not doing it, so we want more people to do it. We don't want to be alone out there. So this notion of getting together once a week, and there are several people in the room right now who do that with us. But here we go. So we're going to have some fun with tomorrow morning, and anybody in the room tonight who wants to be with us tomorrow, Josh and I offer an opportunity for you to audit. If you're auditing it, the only thing we ask is that you not necessarily speak into it unless you're invited to, because we want to make sure those people who have dedicated their mornings for the past year are heard first. How many of you have been to Edinburgh, Scotland? Isn't it gorgeous? Isn't it fantastic? And you see this wonderful tower at the Balmoral Hotel, and that was the hotel that Sean Connery owned, who died recently. But this wonderful book is on display in our international room, How the Scots Invented the Modern World, and it's not, in terms of history, it's not hyperbole. And what we're talking about here is the thinking, not the ethnic background, not the nationality. It's how rebellious they've been for so long and how they just want to shake things up. And here they are in 2021 doing the same thing. They want to break away from the crowd and all those things. But it had a big impact on the way this country was founded. And so in 1776, the foundation of our country, as we talked about with Jane Brigga's chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution the other night, we were talking about the entire premise of the United States was based on better than before what? Thinking. So it's better than England, it's better than the crown, it's better than being a subject, it's better than the Roman Empire, things of that nature. It's always been that way. And we must continue it. It's a very important thing that if we continue to develop our thinking, we will develop our country. If we don't do that, we're not going to develop the country. And we can't leave it up to Apple and artificial intelligence to do that for us. But a few months ago, we named a Scot to be our entrepreneur to watch. And how many of you know who Sam Hewitt is? Excellent. And he was here this weekend in Rosemont. We tried to get him over here. When he heard the President of the United States was here 2 weeks ago, and then Jackie Joyner Kersey was here the next week, I think he
think you must have been intimidated.
or busy. But it's interesting for us because we need to have role models for young people to look at in terms of entrepreneurship. This guy is a go-getter. I studied him deeply. I looked into some interviews that he gave where he said, for example, that he's so glad that his celebrity came, his success came when he was in his 40s, because if he were any younger, he wouldn't have known how to handle it. Now, that's the kind of thinking that appeals to us. And when I think back to my arrogance in my 20s and my 30s, whoa, I wish I had that presence of mind that he has. But he launched a fine whiskey, and people I've read the reviews about the Scotch drinker, and he designed a tartan. He has a worldwide fitness initiative that is catching on big time. He's a TV producer, a book author. He's in so many movies right now, charity chairman, humanitarian, all these great things. But keep in mind that this is the tweet that got the 50,000 plus attention. So we need more celebrities. So anybody who has any plans to be a celebrity, let me know. So tomorrow morning, we're going to keep this Scottish theme alive. And this is Bruce Walker from an organization that Richard Branson underwrote. Bruce and I met. I have to double check with him, and we'll do that tomorrow online. But I think we met about 8 or 9 years ago. And Branson sent a team over here to try to build a collaboration with Chicago. I'm going to be very candid about this and just tell you that Chicago wasn't very warm. They spent maybe, Bruce and I estimated $250,000, $300,000 for that day-long conference. And the people from Chicago were trying to tell the Brits and the Scots how to do things. And they were saying, like, can't we all get along? Can't we all like share ideas? And that whole summit that Branson paid for has never been back to Chicago. It goes to other cities around the nation and other parts of the world. But we've learned a lot as a city since then. And so have I, and so has Bruce. And so we're really delighted to say that we're opening tomorrow morning at 8:45. We're opening a transatlantic channel. That's 2:45 p.m. for his team over in Scotland. And so anybody who wants to be online with us tomorrow, you can audit or participate if you're part of the group. So he runs an organization called Future X, and what made Richard Branson invest $300,000 to start Future X was that when Bruce started this, he was a purpose-driven entrepreneurship program. So when I was in Edinburgh 2 years ago for a couple weeks, he introduced me to all the government officials who handle entrepreneurship education over there. As I've told Josh and Chief Mikel and Trustee Lisner, the most remarkable woman that I met who analyzed Enclave's purpose, our mission, our vision, got so excited about it. And I didn't know her background until later in the conversation, but the government of Scotland hired a physicist to handle the interactions with entrepreneurs. That's how they prioritize entrepreneurial thinking, entrepreneurial science, entrepreneurial importance to Scotland's economy. And Scotland, by the way, has the same population as Cook County. It's kind of a startling factor, isn't it? And so roughly 5.3 million people in Cook County and 5.3 or 4 million in Scotland. So, and Jane, this is for you. Wreaths Across America. What a beautiful ceremony that was a couple of years ago. We couldn't do it last year, but we're doing it again this December, the 18th. Oak Grove Cemetery, this cemetery that's up there, I-90, right off the Arlington Heights Road, has 2 Revolutionary War heroes buried there, the only 2 in Cook County. Nowhere else in this giant county is anybody buried from the Revolutionary era. And it's a very moving thing where we place wreaths on graves that remind us of the sacrifice, but also remind us of the greatness of the people of our country. And as we talked about the other night, when you look at art from now on, and you go to an event like Wreaths Across America, think about how people were thinking. And so you see an artist, we have a beautiful portrait up there of George Washington and several other people with Betsy Ross. Great painting, a painting that I hadn't seen until I went looking. And every one of the faces on there were the faces of thought. And there was even a person looking there at the flag like this. And so that when you look at art, and I learned this years ago, you look at art, just look for the look of thinking. And so here are artists who have been telling us for millennia that thinking is important. And we're not talking just about Rodin's thinker, that's more than that. But wreaths across America, please join us. And certainly keep in mind that if you want to talk about sponsoring or buying wreaths to place, I think we're all going to be there. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the great things you do through the Daughters of the American Revolution. So as we're still on the calendar, in January 2022, David Schuller, Dr. Schuller, will begin as president of our advisory council. David and I had a lively dinner last night, and it went on and on and on and on as we talked about the need for the business community, the government officials, and the schools at all levels to be more communicative and collaborative about the workforce of tomorrow. And we all believe it, we've all studied it, we have all been preaching it for quite some time. But I am so excited about his coming in as our new president for the advisory council because he's also an entrepreneur with full permission of the government. So he and a group of people are building a ed tech technology for the education space. And some of you may know that Dr. Schuller became the superintendent of the year for the entire United States in 2018 because of what? His radical thinking. And so again, this is an ideal person to lead us throughout the next couple of years. And for those of you who are in El Pro Village or know people who have businesses here, cohort number 3, cohort 2022, will start on 11 January. And Josh has been kind enough to submit for scholarship funding. So the expense is negligible. It just you pay your own gas to drive over here, or walk, depending on where you live.
We'll come pick you up.
Sam, you could walk.
I used to be able to.
So we'll see you here. But on the first Thursday of 10 months out of the year, we will convene here in person. We will not do this online. Again, it disrupted our objective because the peer-to-peer support, peer-to-peer connection is so germane to the idea. And so anyone who has interest in this, I am staying out of the selection process appropriately, and so Josh and Nick Radcliffe are the two people with whom to speak if you have interest. Please have interest. So who is our representative from MBBI here tonight? There he is. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Would you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Ray Horn, attorney Luxembourg Stell in Schaumburg, and we enjoy a great partnership again. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. And the Midwest Business Brokers and Intermediaries will have in January their annual conference in, I think, Oak Brook. I think that's where it was, the Hyatt out there, if I understood correctly. And we are partnering in terms of content development, and Dr. Schuller has agreed to be the keynote presenter. Our county commissioner will speak. The Entrepreneur of the Year of Enclave in 2018, the fellow who's sold his 10-month-old company to Expedia for $21 million, is on our panel that day. He just closed a deal for $500 million with Goldman Sachs a few weeks ago, so he's got a lot to talk about. And yes, that's it.
Oh, it is?
It is. It is. And he's this is a little bit of a side about Naperville. He lives in Naperville.
Around the
And,
corner for me.
yeah, and everybody wants him to move to New York or move down to where this company is that they invested. He doesn't want to leave Naperville.
He's a real kind of guy.
He really is.
Yeah.
He's a remarkable character. Eric Broughton is his name, and he's on our advisory board here, as is Jeff Taylor, who recently sold his employee-owned company to a company in Wisconsin, and just about everybody got rich in the deal, which was terrific. But we're delighted to be collaborating with MBBI. The other thing we do with them, as some of you already know, is we do a podcast series that is recorded downstairs in our studios. And it's produced by us, and the music has been contributed by our audio engineer who wrote it from scratch. And so it's all quite compelling. So we're looking forward to that. We'll keep posted on that. For those of you who wonder where I live, that's where I live. So that's my little corner of the world on there. But everybody said, where do you live? I said, I live down near the lake, and that's just happens to be the perspective is overcome Lincoln Park. Josh, come on up. I have to introduce Josh Brownson, who is our Director of Business Development and Marketing and all those good things for Elk Grove Village. But he's also my thinking partner. When we're together, we can't stop. We just think and think and think until his family calls him home. So that's Josh. So Josh is going to give just a couple of minutes of reports. No, it feels like it.
So, as John said, I'm Josh Grodson. I'm the Director of Business Development and Marketing for Elk Grove Village. I've been at the village for 11 years. Flies by. Sam can't believe it. But I'm excited to be here. You know, I've been with John since day one, probably before day one, many days before day one. And, you know, he's done an incredible job in developing Enclave, and Elk Grove is definitely better for it. So thank you, John, for that. But I do quickly want to tell you a couple things about Elk Grove Village that we've been doing lately. I know we have a lot of great speakers, so I don't want to pick up too much time. But I don't want to come off as bragging, because anyone who knows anything about Enclave, bragging is not a virtue. So I'm not being braggadocious. I just want to let you know how Elk Grove is thinking lately, because you have to change your way of thinking these days. You know, in the economic development world that I've been in for over 20 years, 25 years or so, it's competitive. You know, villages and cities are competing with each other for investment. And in the past, we could, tout and promote our infrastructure and our transportation networks and our, large industrial park and vast building stock. But that's just not enough anymore to really attract companies. So we had to think differently. We had to think, what can we do that's new and unique that no one else is doing? And I guess it seems obvious, but it took us a while. But we learned from John, we really need to support people. That's what it's all about. That's what economic development is all about, is supporting people. So in the last 2 months, which has flown by so quickly, in the last 2 months we held our first ever job fair in Elk Grove Village, where we had over 130 companies come and exhibit, and we had over 500 people come to look for a job. I didn't know what to expect. We've never done a job fair before, but it was really rewarding to see that turnout and see that the companies turn out and the people turn out, because, like I said, we're supporting people, we're helping people get jobs. I'm clumsily going to segue. I don't know how to, but Summer, you have someone with you that you hired at the job fair. Maybe you want to introduce her.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Summer. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit here in Elk Grove Village, Milk Bank. So we pasteurize and process milk for premature babies in all of the local hospitals in Illinois and Wisconsin. And we actually had 3 or 4 job openings. So we attended the job fair and we met Carrie, and Carrie's a licensed therapist with a lot of experience in nonprofits and healthcare. So we created a job for her kind of on the spot. You have to be flexible with your thinking. So even if you go with 3 positions in mind, you might find someone that can bring great value to your organization. So we were grateful for the job fair, and Carrie's doing a great job. She's part of the family now, and we're looking forward to many more years here in Elk Grove Village.
Thank you. And just a few weeks later, the job fair was on July 31st. Just a little while later, on October 11th, we had our 8th annual manufacturing expo. If you don't know, every year, well, for the last 8 years, not counting last year because we canceled it, we hold a manufacturing expo and trade show right here in Elk Grove Village, and we usually have close to 100 exhibitors and 800-900 people show up, all manufacturing companies. And this year we had it, even with COVID kind of still lingering out there, but we still had 50 companies, 54 companies, and about 300 plus people come to the event. So, once again, we're reaching out to the business community and helping them with, find employees, help them find business leads. And in another couple weeks, on November 5th, we're having our second job fair. We did it once, it was successful, let's just keep doing it. That's our motto here. So we're going to have November 5th, we're going to have another job fair. This one, the last one was at Elk Grove High School. This one is going to be at the Park District Pavilion. And any Elk Grove-based company can get a free booth. But anyone from Chicagoland is welcome to attend. And like I said, we had over 500 people to the last one. Those are people from all over Chicago, and not just Elk Grove residents, obviously. So that's just how, Elk Grove has kind of pivoted in the last year or so. We're still attracting companies the good old-fashioned way, marketing, advertising, networking, but we're really, adding on this other element where we're really supporting businesses, directly supporting people. And like I said, I've been doing economic development for 25 years or so with other entities, counties, other cities. And I can tell you this last 2 months with this job fair and the expo has probably been the most rewarding 2 months of my career, because you're really, getting to help people, have a future, and what could be more important than a job? Take care of your family. I thank Elk Grove Village for my job. It's given my family a life, and I'm just happy to be able to help others do that as well. So that's all I have. I know we have a lot of great speakers, so I'll yield to
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you have any statistics on how many people actually got hired from that job fair?
we did do a survey after the job fair, and surveys are tricky because not a lot of people answer them. Out of the 500 plus, we have, like I said, 130 companies attend. Not everyone answered the survey, but from what I can glean from the information, it was at least there were hires in the teams, like 14, 15 people got hired.
Oh, that, Josh, you tell me,
I would imagine it was, I just,
the
not from the survey.
woman right next to me, hired 12 people.
Oh, there you go. It's hard to get that information because people don't answer surveys, so it's anecdotal.
What, ask me?
Well, answer the question.
But ask how many people were hired for us, but no. Not yet, not yet.
I'll look forward to it.
But it was a great event, and for a first time event,
Yeah, people got hired on the spot. It was hectic. So, and it's hard to get information because the surveys are not really answered, but people were hired at the job fair, people were hired after the job fair. I got a couple emails from people saying they were hired other than, summer's hiring. So, what makes the job fair successful? Is it 14 jobs? Is it 20 jobs? 30? I don't know. But
it's just
it's just jobs. It was great. Yeah. That's all.
Let's give Josh a round of applause for all the hard workers. One of the joys that we have, Trustee Lisner and others, and I have the opportunity to go with Josh to ambassador visits where we visit companies and ask them to tell us their story, and then we tell them our story. People are always blown away by all the things that are going on in Elk Grove Village. It's almost overwhelming for them to hear it. Now, I want to just take a second to tell you that I absolutely can't hold in higher esteem anybody other than Sam Lisner. And he's going to be embarrassed, but I mean it. His heart is golden. He has a great brain. He comes up with ideas for us. We even have a Samuel Lisner Idea Award that we offer to people. It's a $25 Starbucks card for the ideas that come out of one of our weekly events. But Sam, we can't thank you enough for all of your dedication to this, and everybody here really believes strongly in the good heart and mind of Sam. I've asked Sam to introduce my good friend and colleague, Chief Richard Mikel. Sam?
These are a couple of good speakers to follow. I just wanted to start out with a little commercial for Elk Grove. Anyone that knows our mayor knows he's a real unique thinker. And some of the things he's come up with is in the Bahamas Bowl, the first small community to sponsor a football college bowl game. This year we've sponsored 3 amateur athletic groups that were going to participate in the Olympics, and that brought Jackie Joyner Kersey to Elk Grove, and what a marvelous woman. I think it's been said that she's been voted the best woman athlete of all time by Sports Illustrated, and if you would have heard her speak at the job fair, I must admit there was a tear in my eye because she went through such difficult times. You know, she was from the St. Louis, East St. Louis area, and she really, in fact, she had a muscle pull during the Olympics, and she fought through it, but it was really amazing. And of course, the other thing the mayor helped bring to Elk Grove is Enclave. As John said, it's unique, and we love having Enclave here. And as far as the recording on Elk Grove TV, any of you that do not live in Elk Grove and don't have Comcast, I'll make sure that John has instructions, I'll get them from Ross, on how you can just see it on the internet. It's going to be again on November 3rd at 7 p.m. And we hope to have more of these televised. And the other thing I have to say real quick, I remember the first time I walked in this building, long before the harpist was here, and John talked about dust. This was dirt. I mean, it was really, really, I mean, we could have started a farm in here. But John, I think, by himself really did most of the work in here, and it's a beautiful place. I don't know if you've had a tour of it, but it's all the rooms have such thought in their naming, and it's truly great. So thank you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to introduce Chief Richard Mikel. He's a 50th Master Class speaker. Am I? Okay, good.
These slides or something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's good.
Anyway, Chief Mikel, we had to cut this back a little because I'd be here for hours talking about this gentleman's background, but he started out in, let's see, where was it? Actually spent 26 years in Naperville. We heard about Naperville earlier, and we were very thankful in Naperville for letting Chief Mikel come to Elk Grove because he's outstanding. He also served as deputy chief in Downers Grove for a couple of years. And following a nationwide search by Elk Grove, and it truly was a nationwide search, Chief Mikel was hired, and he's been serving since 2012. And he's involved in so many things, like he's vice president of the Illinois Fire Chiefs Association. He's a member of the Elections Committee for International Association of Fire Chiefs. He also serves as vice president of Mutual Aid Alarm Box System. It's called MABIS. That's where all the towns help each other out. In fact, it started in Elk Grove, didn't it? Yeah. And he also serves on the executive committee of Northwest Central Dispatch. That's where all our 9/11 calls go to, and they do a fantastic job as well. He's also on the Fire Chiefs Committee at Northwest Community Hospital. He coordinates the annual conference for the Illinois Fire Chiefs Association. And I'm going to skip over a little just to speed it up. But I got pages here, Chief. But he has received many awards, but the one I wanted to get to is in 2018, Chief Mikel was selected as the Illinois Fire Chief of the Year. And Illinois probably has more government than any other state in the country, so that's quite an honor. So I'm sure Chief Mikel's talk will be excellent, and let me get out of his way, and why don't you join me in welcoming Chief Mikel.
Thank you very much, Trustee Lister. It's a pleasure to be here. Sure. I'm going to let John switch to my slide.
Yeah.
I'm going to make an escape out of it.
Hold it.
It's absolutely wonderful to be back at the Enclave. I've been fortunate enough to participate in programs here since the Enclave opened, and It's truly been a pleasure to get together with John Dallas, to get to know John and the information that he brings. He's worked closely with our management team in the village, with our elected officials, with the fire department itself, as well as the business community and anybody else who's willing to participate in his learning, his lessons. And truly a wonderful man to have here in our community, and the improvements and the ideas that have come from the enclave and from John are almost immeasurable. So it's really nice to be here. And Trustee Listman, thank you. As you said, I worked for a few other communities before I came here, and I could have this part where I don't say anything, but I'm not going to do that, because without question, the support that we get in not only the fire department, but the police department and public works and the other village departments, the support that we get from our elected officials and from our citizens is second to none. So thank you very much for you, Mayor Johnson, and the other trustees, for allowing us to be able to serve the public in the way that we can. So it's very much appreciated. It's also nice to be here in October. Why would you want the fire chief here in October? There's a question.
Fire safety.
It's Fire Safety Month, Fire Prevention Month. Fire Prevention Week is typically the first week in October. And why is that? Do we remember that? That's because of the week of the Great Chicago Fire, right? So it was implemented after the Great Chicago Fire because we never want that to happen again anywhere. So we want to make our strides into keeping the public safe. We want to recognize that event every year. We want to recognize fire safety and fire prevention efforts every day and go forward with that. So it's really nice to be here in October. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of information, a little bit of historical perspective on some of the things that we have in the fire service. And John asked me to talk about getting into gear for public safety. So a little bit of a historical perspective on some things that we'll see here. You may have seen this quote before. I don't know, has anybody seen the movie Backdraft? Remember that was a very popular fire service movie a long time ago? And hanging on the wall in the firehouse, there was a plaque. And that plaque said, 150 years of tradition, unimpeded by progress, hanging on the wall in the firehouse. Okay, all right. And some people might look at that and go, yeah, that's it, that's the fire service. And there are still some things we absolutely do the same way we did 150 years ago. Water still puts out fire. Water still puts out most fires. Some things have changed, right? But we do still do that. But to this, I say, well, you know, that's just not accurate, because there's been so many changes, and the fire service has come so far over the last 150 years plus, that sometimes we just take some things for granted, and we don't really appreciate what we do have. Now, there's a couple of different pieces of fire apparatus up here on the slide, and I've actually worked on a few of those. Wait a minute, a few of those. Hold on. So the one in the upper left-hand corner, that's going back to Naperville. I spent 2.5 decades working in Naperville, which is a wonderful place to be. But that's their first pumper that the city of Naperville bought when the fire department was organized back in 1874. So at the Naper Settlement, which is a collection of buildings, historical buildings from when Naperville was developed, there's a fire station there, and that hand pumper is in there. And in those days, the fire engine, or the fire pumper would be drawn by hand. So you see some handles out in front, and there would be a bell that would ring, and people who wanted to volunteer as firefighters would run to the station and get that and pull it by hand and run to where the fire was, ringing the bell to clear the street ahead of them. And on the side there, those big handles that you see are actually called brakes. And you would pump those up and down and get the hose into a water supply. And that's how you would pump water through the hose line, a big piston pump that was inside there. And it was a remarkable piece of equipment in this day. It surpassed what we had before that, which was the bucket brigade, when you would pass buckets to throw water at a fire. This was something that actually pumped water. And it still pumps water today, which is pretty impressive. The one in the center is, so again, that was from 1874, and it truly is the first hand pumper that the city of Naperville bought. It was $1,000 for that pumper and a hose cart back in 1874. In the center, we see a beautiful picture of a horse-drawn steamer from the 1890s. So we progressed from buckets to hand-pulled fire engines to horse-drawn fire engines in the 1890s. You see the steam coming out of the fire engine, and they'd be throwing coal in the back. The firefighter in the back would throw coal to build up steam, and that steam would then drive the pump that was there to help pump water through the hose to the fire. So it was a tremendous advancement from the hand-drawn fire engine to the horse-drawn fire engine. Then we get into the 20s, and this vehicle is also from Naperville. That's a 1924 Aaron's Fox there, but again, it's motorized. And we've made advances now because we don't have to have horses, we don't have people pulling the trucks. It actually has a motor inside of it. And the big silver dome up on top there is a pressure chamber where the pressure is built up in the pump to help deliver pressure through a hose line. Now that particular fire engine, I've had the opportunity to drive and operate that also. It's an antique, it's on display. I wasn't ever assigned to it, it wasn't a frontline vehicle. Not that, but that vehicle, it's spectacular. First off, it's beautiful, but to drive that vehicle is an adventure. No power steering, no power brakes, manual transmission, so you get that going, you have to try to shift it to get it into the right gear after you double clutch it. And when you want to turn that around a corner, if you want to make a tight turn, you pretty much have to stand up in that seat. And it takes 2 men and a boy to turn that steering wheel to get it around, because again, no automatic power steering on that. So it's really an adventure to drive it, but it takes you back in time to remember where we came from and how that was. And now we have a more modern fire engine here from Elk Grove Village. It's just a couple years old for this one. And you look at these other engines and you think about how we've come and say that we've not made progress. No, it's not only the fire service, but in general, population, our civilization has made progress. From hand-drawn to horse-drawn to motorized, to now we've got vehicles like this. And, you know, folks, if the air conditioning goes out, they want to take it out of service. Is that really? Good? Do we really need to take this out of service and send it in for repairs because the air conditioning doesn't work? Is that really what we've become? But it's not. But we have all those comforts. All right, yes. We have the comforts, you know, like power windows and air conditioning, the AM/FM radio inside there, and they're really nice. One thing I don't show here, though, is the next generation of fire apparatus. And much the same as the automotive industry is switching to battery-powered vehicles, electric vehicles, so too is the fire service. So there are fire apparatus out today. There's some, Los Angeles has some, Madison, Wisconsin just got one. There are some out in America now. They're not as popular here as they are in other places, but totally battery-driven electric fire engines are on the market now, and we'll be looking at that in the future. Again, reducing our carbon output, increasing the efficiency of our operations. So again, if you look at this from 1874 to 2015, we've made some progress there, right? I think we're going along okay. Now, what about our communications? And stand up here. Those of you who know me know that I could stand up here and talk about fire stuff for the next 3 hours, but according to the agenda, I've got 7 more minutes. So we might go a little past that. Is that okay? So as we talk about communications capabilities, I want to take a look at a couple of things up here. And I brought some props to share with you too. So back in the 1800s, this is called a speaking trumpet. They weren't unique to the fire service. They were used in the nautical area too, used in other areas too. But when an officer in charge at a fire wanted to give orders to the people who were working in the fire, they would come through here. And again, it's a megaphone. And I don't want to do that in a microphone. Sorry for the folks at home. I apologize for that. I won't do that again. But this is what was used to convey orders at the scene of a fire so other folks could hear you. A little bit of trivia for you. If you notice what this is, and you notice the symbols of rank that we have on our collars, that's what these are. They're speaking trumpets. So a company officer, someone in charge of one fire unit, will have one of these. Someone in charge of several units would have 2. A battalion chief would have 2 that are crossed. Up to and including the fire chief, and the emblem on our shoulders here is 5 of these crossed. So they're old speaking trumpets. This one was from Pennsylvania in the late 1800s. It's pretty nice to have. But we've come a long way from that. So we've moved forward past the speaking trumpet era into the center portable radio there. I don't have one of those, but that was a tremendous advancement in how we could communicate with each other at the scene of an emergency. It was about the size and weight of a car battery. You had to have a strap to hold it over your shoulder. There was a big antenna that could pull up from it, and you could talk to someone and hopefully get a clear message from one point to another. Hopefully. It didn't always work well. It had to be perfected. We moved forward a couple of decades into this handheld portable radio that we have here. Much more clear, much better communications. The VHF radio signal was very good, and we're doing well with those for quite some time. We move into our current times, where we have the handheld portable radio like this, which is all digital technology. When I speak into this radio, it takes my voice, condenses it down into a data packet, transmits that data package from one radio to another, unscrambles that data package, and brings it out through a speaker in the form of a voice. So it's not actually my voice being transmitted like it was on the VHF radios, but it's actually a data packet that goes forward from one mini computer to another. Pretty interesting. So you say, what's next, Chief? Well, exactly what you think. Now, there's an app for that. So anything I can do on this radio, where I have to be in the footprint of our radio system, which is a limited space, I can now dial up the app that's on my cell phone from anywhere in the world. I can talk back and forth to our units here. Now, they don't really want me interfering with the fire here if I'm on the beach in the Bahamas, like that ever happens, but I could do that if I wanted to, right? And this is technology, again, digital technology, how we've come so far from where we were. Another thing we sometimes might take for granted in our lives, the simple fire helmet. And this helmet, this style of fire helmet was designed by a firefighter back in New York a long time ago. This isn't actually one of those. A firefighter named Henry Graticat came up with this design. And the idea was that the way this is formulated, anything if were to fall on top of you would be deflected away from you, so it would reduce the injuries to your head. It's got a little suspension inside to help protect. And the long rim on the back was designed so that when you're applying water to a fire, it comes down hot. If you've never experienced that, that's quite an experience. But when you put water into a fire, what doesn't convert to steam comes back on you, it's hot. So the long rim on the back is designed to channel the water so it doesn't run down the back of your collar. Okay? So, simple design, beautiful, very ornate in its day. It was really nice to have. In the center, you see what's called a stovepipe cap there, and that was more for parades and decoration in the top center there. We continue to progress. So you see they were rather ornate in the day. You know, that was a style that was consistent. We still have this style of helmet today. And then as we progress, there was a firefighter in New York City who was wearing one of these style helmets and was inside of a commercial building fire and crawling through the smoke, which isn't like it is on TV. You can't really see very well. He ran into a piece of angle iron and it slashed his eye, and he was injured pretty badly. And he said, you know, when we talk about entrepreneurs, there's got to be a better way. So he developed what's called the Bork Eye Shield, which is this right here, back in the 1960s, named after him. Lester Bork was his name. And he's got a spring here that he actually saw a mechanic taking a spring device out of a vehicle. He was in there working on one of the trucks. And he said, I can use that spring to make both of these pieces of plastic come down at the same time so that it protects your eyes. And then, since then, we've had the Bork Eye Shield. He wore that at the training tower, at the training facility of the New York City Fire Department, and one of his officers saw that and said, that's really a good idea. What can we do with that? So they met with the manufacturers of the fire helmets, who worked with him to patent this device, and Cairns and Brothers, which is the manufacturer of the fire helmets, started to sell these eye protection with their helmets from that point forward, 1966. Worked well for us for a long time. I know it sounds simple. We're pretty simple people, but then we moved into the full face protection. Because instead of just protecting your eyes where you hit the large gap underneath, we moved into this. Now today, we have the helmets in the bottom right-hand side, more like a motorcycle helmet, full face protection, neck protection that keeps you from getting burned, nice suspension system inside for comfort and fit. You can get these with lights built into them so you can see where you're going. They can actually integrate with our radios, our communication system, so you can communicate via your helmet without having to maneuver a different radio. How do you think that's going over with the fire service? Oh yeah, everybody's shaking their head. Because what does a fireman look like? You wear one of these, right? This is what a fireman looks like. No fireman wants to look like this.
Nope.
Despite the fact that they're probably more safe, they're absolutely more comfortable, definitely more technologically advanced, and probably better protection. It is so difficult for us to get our firefighters to switch from the traditional style helmet, which the world knows and loves, into this style helmet. It's really been an interesting challenge. But we're going to keep working on it. I guess myself included, because I don't have one either. But we'll keep working on it. We'll keep working on it. I mentioned, now here's a long slide that I don't expect you to read, but you can see this somewhere if you want. This is a story of Les Bork who developed those eye shields. And the next slide here, there's actually a picture of him. It was hard to get a good picture, but that's him in the upper left-hand corner. Again, in 1966, give or take, when he's manufacturing those Bork eye shields for the first time, which was really a tremendous improvement in the protection of firefighters. Once again, we're not stymied by 150 years of tradition. He's going forward. Another person we want to talk about just briefly is a gentleman named Hugh Halligan, also of the New York City Fire Department. And we think about entrepreneurs in the fire service, it makes sense that some of these folks are coming from the New York City Fire Department, one of the older departments in the country, absolutely the busiest department in the country. When they have more experiences, more needs to address on a more regular basis, that the entrepreneurs are coming up with these things sooner than we see in other places. And again, I'm not going to read this entire slide, but the gentleman named Hugh Halligan came up with this tool that was going to be a better option for what we call forcible entry. When we go to a building that's on fire, there's not always people there. Not always somebody meets us out the front door with a key, not always is a door open, so we have to force entry. So he came up with this tool that was a better option. That's a picture of him as a young fire officer there in the upper left with the bar that he developed right there in the center. In the bottom right or the bottom left, you see the bars, the original bars, have his name actually engraved in them. And it's the Halligan bar. And I am extremely confident to tell you that today, decades after Hugh Halligan, long after his death, he invented this bar, that any fire engine you go to in this country will have a Halligan bar on it. Because it is so well designed, it is so good at what it doesn't do anything on its own, but what it can do in the right hands is amazing. So to this day, a credit to Hugh Halligan that we use these. And to just solidify my point with this, I want to show you a picture. This is current day New York City. I just went online and did a search for New York City firefighters. In every one of these pictures, someone's carrying a Halligan bar. Every one of them. Because it's that versatile of a tool, invented decades ago by a New York City firefighter. We'll call him an entrepreneur as well for this. Now, actually having one of his original bars with his signature in there, lots of money. I'd love to have one. Not going to happen. I won't say it. So again, we found ways to make our job better, even though it was decades ago. Another thing we'll touch on briefly here is fire sprinkler systems. Again, it's Fire Prevention Month, Fire Prevention Week. It's just here. The sprinkler systems that we have that protect our building are the absolute best thing going in fire safety. They've been around. You see here, the first fire sprinkler was installed in the United Kingdom, Theatre Royal, in Drury Lane, in 1812. 1812. It's over 200 years ago that the first fire sprinkler was installed. And yet we still have trouble getting people to install fire sprinklers today. They're effective. They've worked well since then. They've made modifications. You know, this was a giant cylindrical airtight reservoir of water. And someone would have to manually activate that. And the water would come down through perforated pipes. And in this initial system, it sent water everywhere. And that's one of our biggest enemies that we see in the fire service when we try to promote fire sprinklers and sprinkler safety is the movie industry. Because anytime there's a fire in the movies, every sprinkler head in the building goes off and it just floods the building with water. That's just not the way it works, folks. These little sprinkler heads here have a little fusible link inside of them, and when it gets to be 135 or 165 degrees, depending on the setting, that little red center on that sprinkler head will melt and break apart. And when it does so, that sprinkler head will discharge water. And the water gets discharged right to where the fire is. Now, it's not unusual to have 2, maybe 3 sprinkler heads open, but it's not very often, if ever, that you see every sprinkler head. You have to have an incredible fire, a flash fire, which is possible to overpower a sprinkler system, but that's quite rare. So over the years, you know, the fire sprinkler systems continue to improve. From 1852 to 1885, the perforated pipes were used mainly in textile mills through New England. We continue to progress, and a gentleman named Henry Parmalee invented the first, the practical application of an automatic sprinkler head. Again, this was in 1874. He installed the fire sprinkler, and the sprinkler head would spray water in the room if there was heat that melted it. So we credit Henry Parmalee, as the entrepreneur, for taking us to the next level in fire sprinkler protection. Now we can look, and up in the 40s, you know, up until the 40s, they were mainly in industrial buildings, commercial buildings like that. Now we have fire sprinkler systems in all buildings. In fact, it's part of our code here in Elk Grove Village, thanks again to the elected officials, that all new construction, commercial, industrial, and residential will have fire systems as well, fire sprinkler systems. So yes, there are fire sprinkler systems for residential, for new construction in homes. You can have your home retrofitted for a sprinkler if you want to do that. We've come a long way with that. Excuse me. Just some examples here of different types of sprinkler head, from the earliest sprinkler heads on the left to the one you see in the bottom right-hand corner, where that's a two-step sprinkler system there. First, that white cap, the heat would get to such a point that that white cap will fall off. Then the sprinkler head will drop down out of the ceiling. Then if it continues to get hot, then the sprinkler head will activate itself. Now, Elk Grove Village is known these days for data centers. We've got over a dozen data centers here in the community, wonderful additions to our community. We're happy to have them here. Microsoft building another data center here. And you're saying, how is that going to impact something like a data center? Can we protect that with a fire sprinkler system? Well, yes, we can. Because the technology and the science has kept up with this, so that we have it's called a pre-action sprinkler system. And what that means is we need to have two events happen before that sprinkler head will start to discharge water. So let's say we get a smoke alarm activated. The pipes in the ceiling are typically dry in those systems. There's not water in those pipes all the time. We get a smoke detector activated. It sends a signal that says, hey, there might be a fire here. At which point a valve opens and water starts to fill those pipes. If the heat builds up to the same part like we talked about where there is a fire, then at that point we would actually start to discharge water. But not just from the smoke detector. There's a couple of steps that have to take place, because with sensitive electrical equipment, computer equipment, we don't want to be flooding with water if we don't have to. So again, the technology has come quite a long way here. So let's keep going on. What about these things? These are called thermal imaging cameras. And I would say in the mid-1990s, we started looking at this technology on how the fire service could do a better job in seeing through smoke. So in the upper left-hand corner was the first application of a thermal imaging camera for the fire service. It builds on the technology that the military had used for their night vision goggles, along those lines. This application came to the fire service. That was incredibly heavy. I don't like to quote, but I want to say that it was about 15 pounds that device in the upper left-hand corner weighed. And you had a big battery on one side, and you had a camera on the other side on your helmet, and then in the center was a screen that folded down. So the only way you could maneuver through a building, navigate through a building, was to look at that screen and try to follow your way that way. But with that on, you could look through smoke, and you get an image of a person that you could see because of the difference in temperature. As time went on, we went to the handheld device in the upper right-hand corner. Again, the technology continued to progress. And this camera, and I'll tell you specifically about this one. I was the training officer at the Naperville Fire Department. And we were looking to buy thermal imaging cameras to put on the fire apparatus at the time. And so we had this K90 talisman camera come out. We had 5 or 6 other manufacturers. We had a training tower there where we could actually light rooms on fire, and we made fires with straw and wood pallets. And they got hot and they got smoky, and we took these cameras in side by side, and in the worst fire conditions we could make, we wanted to see which cameras would hold up best. And without question, the one in the upper right-hand corner, every person who was there, they couldn't agree if the sky was blue, if it was partly cloudy or partly sunny, if it was a good day or a bad day. But every person who crawled through that burning building with cameras, with all the different variety we tried, voted for this one. So we bought those for our apparatus. But if you see that, it's kind of hard to tell from the picture, but it's similar in size to what VHS cameras used to be. Remember the first ones you bought? And you threw them up on your shoulders, you could take pictures of your vacation, you had to lug that around with you. It was similar in size to that. As the technology continued to improve, we see in the lower left-hand corner a nice handheld device like that. Okay, now we're making progress, because now a firefighter can crawl through a building, you can still feel your way as you're going along, but you can look. And the idea behind these is we can do a quick search to help someone who's in trouble get them out of the building that much quicker. So if we have to go to a house that's on fire and it's the middle of the night, we're going to make our way up the stairs to check the bedrooms. With this camera, we can go down the hallway, go to each door, do a quick look inside, and we will immediately get the signature of a person, just like this, if there's a person inside there, through the smoke, through the most dense black smoke you can imagine. We still have the ability to see people through the smoke. Again, now, as the technology has continued, the bottom right-hand corner, that's about the size of a cell phone. You can flip it onto your air pack. Yes, ma'am?
Sees animals as well?
Yes. Yeah, because they also give up a heat signature. So, again, as we talk about technology and how things have changed and what we're doing in the fire service, we went from that 15-pound monstrosity that you had to try to balance on your head to this device that's about the size of a telephone. So, the idea that we're not advancing in technology, it's disturbing, you know, because we have so many things that we are doing. If you look at pictures of old firefighters, you know, from back in the day, and we take one of these helmets, and then you see them, you know, and they're beautiful uniforms with the helmets and the trumpets like this, and they look so grand. And oftentimes you'll see that those firefighters have big beards. You go, well, how do they have big beards, you know? Well, it wasn't only for aesthetics, if you will, but also, back in those days, that was the only thing the firefighters could use at the time to help filter smoke. So they would take those beards and fold them up, get them wet if they could, cover their nose and face as they were going into a building that was on fire to help filter out smoke. And we've come a long way since then too. So now we've got the ear packs that we wear on our back. We've got a nice harness. The bottle that we have has 4,500 pounds of pressure in it. This means nothing to you probably, but it's grade A breathing air. Some folks think you have oxygen in there, but it's actually breathing air, much the same as you would have in a scuba tank. And it lasts us about 30 or 40 minutes breathing on air at exertion to get inside and search in a building. We don't want to breathe smoke if we don't have to. Those air packs themselves have come a long way since they were invented. It used to be there was a bell in there, and you'd get a bell would ring if you started to run low on air. Well, now inside your mask, we have heads-up displays. And you see a red light, a yellow light, and a green light. The green light, you're good to go. You got plenty of pressure. Yellow, you got to start thinking about what you're doing. Red light, it's time to get out. And the rule that we always taught, you know, young firefighters is you only go in half a tank's worth, because you need half a tank to get back out too. So you got to keep that in mind when you're crawling, especially in our large commercial or industrial buildings. You have to be cognizant of your escape route too when you're going inside. If you get in too deep someplace in a serious fire with a lot of smoke, you still have to be able to get back out. So we've come a long way with those. So when we talk about new challenges that are faced in public safety, and specifically what I will talk about is the fire service, each of those devices now, we have lithium batteries. And you think about the number of lithium batteries that are in the world. You have them in your phones. You have them in your laptops. You have them in your garage door openers. We have them in vehicles. What is happening with lithium batteries? There was a huge fire in Morris, Illinois, 6 months ago or so, where there was a warehouse. And there was a warehouse that nobody in the village really knew what was inside that warehouse. Nobody ever gave it a second thought. Some people thought it was vacant. It had plumbing supplies at one point. Turns out that building was full, and I mean full, of lithium batteries. A fire started in there somehow. Nobody seems to know that part yet because it's still actually an active scene. But the batteries generate heat. They're extending a significant amount of heat energy from them, and the fire is compounding itself, and it's going on. So I was talking to the fire chief who was in charge of that, and as we typically do, they pulled the hose off the engine, started crawling inside, and trying to put water on it, and nothing was happening, despite the fact that they were putting water. In fact, in some instances, the fire started to get worse instead of better. So as we would do, without knowing exactly what's going on, they pulled back to regroup to try and understand. At which point, someone comes up to the fire chief and says, you know, you got a whole bunch of lithium batteries in there, huh? Gee, good luck. What's up? He said, well, how do you know that, sir? He said, well, I work here. And he said, we take lithium batteries in. And part of the conversation that didn't happen during the incident, when they questioned the owner of the building, said, how come you never applied for a business permit? He said, well, I don't do business there. What do you mean you don't do business there? You've got a building full of lithium batteries. He goes, yeah, but I run the business out of my house. That's just a storage. I don't need a permit for that. I said, well, yeah, you kind of do. He says, well, no, it's no different than if I rented a space at a used store and just stuck a bunch of them in a garage, a used store. It's like, well, no, it is kind of different. And we have to look at that because we need to know what's inside of our buildings. Because not only did it threaten and destroy this business owner's property, it also threatened the neighbors the residents in the area, the water supplies, they tried to put this out. That fire, from start to finish, how long do you think it took before they actually declared that that fire was under control? Some wild guesses. What do you think?
2 weeks.
3 weeks. It was actually 28 days, start to finish, so 4 weeks, start to finish. Put water on it, it's not working. They tried firefighting foam. They used foam to help smother fire and separate heat from vapors from heat. Use that on flammable liquid fires. That's how foam actually works. Because when you have a liquid that's burning, it's giving off vapors, and those vapors are what burn. So if we can float foam on top and interrupt that airspace that's there so that the vapors are no longer in contact, we can smother a fire that way. So they tried foam. That didn't work. They got in touch with the Chicago Fire Department, got one of the aircraft trucks out with what we call Purple K. It's a very particular fire extinguishing agent that's multi-purpose. And they flooded this building with the Purple K agent. Nothing happened. So they're trying to figure out how are we going to put this fire out, because it truly is one of the first lithium battery fires we've had in the United States, or the most significant one by far. They were thinking about, they wanted to decide a way that they could contain and actually encapsulate the batteries that were burning. And one of the fire chiefs who was on the scene there worked in the concrete industry. And he said, you know, we could put concrete on it. And they said, no, concrete's got water in it, we don't want to do that. But they come up with Portland cement that doesn't have water. And they have this in trailers, and the way the Portland cement gets delivered, and I gotta look into this more because I'm not a cement person, but it comes off of a trailer in like a conveyor belt and a chute, and they can deliver it 100 feet away. So they got one of these delivery systems set up at that building, and they extended this chute into the building and started to encapsulate the areas that were burning with this Portland cement. And that started to make progress, and it contained the fire. And as we talk about our technology, we couldn't send people, they couldn't send people into that building because it was too unpredictable. The building, the roof was caving in, there were still these spot fires. They had a drone. So they flew a drone inside the building, switched it from the video mode of the drone to the thermal imaging method of the drone, and were able to direct where they were going to put the cement based on the feedback they got from the drone footage that showed the red areas where the heat was still being generated. So again, not something we would think about. Now, it made me keenly aware of what's going on with these fires. And I read something just recently about New York City. Sadly, the New York City Fire Department reported that they've had a number of deaths that were associated with lithium battery fires. And the place they were coming from, the first one they were coming from, electric scooters. People plugging in their electric scooters at home. They have a fire of unknown origin. Tracing it back and finding out the batteries inside the scooters is what was causing the problems. So we have to be aware of these things, and now that the word is getting out that these fires are associated with those batteries, we have to try and develop a way by which we can be more safe in the way we handle those batteries. The next challenge they're having with that down in Morris is that there's nothing they can do with those batteries. The batteries have been destroyed by the fire. Now that the fire has been contained, there's no place to put them. Nobody wants them. There is no mechanism to recycle those batteries or repurpose them, and no garbage dump wants them. So the US EPA is involved with them trying to figure out what are we going to do with these batteries now that we've had this significant incident. So there's going to be more to come on that, but it's just a fascinating story on how in 2021 we needed to adapt to a new fire suppression strategy. So as I look back and over my career, and think about how things have changed, some of the helmets and the radios and things like that, and the air packs. Like when I started as a firefighter, air packs were something that were becoming more accepted. I remember, when I started, hey kid, if it's a real bad fire and it's going to be nasty, well, there's an air pack in the suitcase in the side of the engine over there. But the old guys never wore those. So if the new guys wore them, they were kind of a sissy, because the old guys didn't need them. Well, unfortunately, those old guys all got cancer as they went forward, and we're trying to be proactive about preventing the cancer that you can accumulate and building up over time the toxins that you breathe in. So we're trying to be very conscientious about that. But we have air packs now. Again, we have fire engines with air conditioning, power windows. Never in my wildest dreams, when I started as a firefighter, would I have believed you if you told me that I would be carrying a ballistic helmet, ballistic vest in my car. Never would I have believed that. But the sad events of the world these days, and the fire service needs to respond to mass shooting incidents. Any mass shooting incident you've seen in a school, a shopping center, a theater, a business, Firefighters and paramedics are working side by side with law enforcement to go inside and get people out of there. So we have to protect our people in that environment just the same as we do in a fire environment, or a technical rescue environment, or a water rescue environment, or any one of those. So the profession and the equipment we use and the technology, it continues to advance. I don't know what's going to be next, but the electronic fire engines are interesting. I'm very interested in that. I was very interested in looking into having an electric fire engine until I sat in on the lithium battery fire presentation. It's like, how do you win this, you know? So we'll see how this develops. But it truly has been fascinating, and, you know, a little trip through history here. I hope you enjoyed that. And I welcome any questions you might have about the things we're talking about, or anything you want to know about the Elk Grove Village Fire Department, or if I don't know the answer, I'll make something up real quick. But please, if you have anything you'd like to, yes, sir.
What are some other challenges you face with your current equipment? Like as far as improvements that you're finding that are not assisting you to put out the fire quicker? I understand like the drones and other things like that do help, but
Yes.
What are some of the other challenges that you're coming across that that could benefit the fire department?
Well, some of the our technology, as wonderful as the technology can be, it can also be a challenge for us. Because with the old mechanical fire apparatus, if we tried to shift the vehicle into pump, and that was a manual shift, you know, you put the clutch in and you shift it from driving the transmission to driving the fire pump, and we could make that work. We could always make that work. Now it's all computer driven. And if it doesn't shift the transmission from the wheels to the pump, there's nothing we can do because it's all controlled by computer. So our backup system for going from drive to pump is almost non-existent today. So if I pull up in front of your house and we've got an incident and we're trying to get the pump engaged, because it's just the same motor drives the wheels that drives the pump, you just have to shift the power from one to the other, we can't do that.
So there's no manual override if the digital fails?
Nothing that's practical to use. Right. Another challenge when we talk about our apparatus is, and this one is extremely frustrating because it's extremely expensive, is the undercarriage maintenance of our fire apparatus in this environment where we work. You know, 10 months out of the year we're fine, but road salt is just destroying the bottom of our apparatus. The frame rails are so susceptible to corrosion and failure over time. We have to find something to do with that. And you know, I think back as a kid, I said, whatever happened to Z-Bar? You know, we need to reinvent Z-Bar for fire truck frame rails, and there's got to be something we can do to protect those.
So, but is the coating I mean, I'm assuming that they have coatings that you spray over the undercarriage, but you're saying that that's not helping?
I'm saying it's insufficient.
Insufficient.
It's a common problem in this section of the country that road salt destroys the frame rails of the vehicles over time. And it's very expensive to repair. So we're looking at something right now, you know, one of our big ladder trucks, you see we call it a truck, not an engine. A fire engine is the little one that carries water and hose, and a fire truck is the big one with the ladders. There you go, there's a difference, there's a difference between a fire engine and a fire truck. So the big trucks with the ladders on them, those price range of anywhere from $900,000 to $1.5 million. And what we've been studying here in the fire department, and with our finance department, and with our public works department, we've been tracking the maintenance of those vehicles. And what we found with the vehicles that we've had, there's always been a standard that you keep a fire truck for 20 years. I don't know where that came from, but it's always been that way. But what we found is as you get into the second 10 years of that life cycle, the maintenance cost of that vehicle rises significantly with its age. And the resale value of that same vehicle plummets. So what we're trying to look at now is, instead of keeping it for 20 years, what if we keep it for 10 years? While it still has a decent resale value, and we don't incur the extensive repair costs for that vehicle. So we're at that point right now with the truck that we have in our fleet, and we're gonna look and see what the resale value is on that, and consider that as an option. Again, rather than keeping something for 20 years that costs a lot to maintain and has no resale value at the end. So challenges there. Some other things we're looking at in the fire service industry, not necessarily in Elk Grove yet, just because of the costs being prohibitive, is robots. You know, robotic firefighters, yes, for lack of a better term. They almost look like little army tanks, and with the tracks on them. And they make them these days so that they can go upstairs, they can go downstairs, they're remote controlled, they have cameras on them so you can see where they're going. And it might be something that would be valuable to have, once again, as I think about the layout of our factories and our business park and the complexities that are associated with those buildings. It would be more safe to put a robotic piece of equipment in there that can deploy water right at the scene of a fire than it is to put people in there. That, again, it's incredibly expensive. The technology is there, but we've got to look at that carefully because that's not the type of thing, your return on investment for something like that does not come soon because of their price. So, other things that we're looking
Put
at.
clothes on them so they look cool.
Yeah, no, I have to get one of our helmets with this.
Yeah, well, no, they were the motorcycle helmet.
Yeah, I bet it would, yeah. Never call in sick either.
For you outlaw firefighters, we do have the job fair.
Yes.
Yes, if the robots with us.
Okay, I like that, thank you. Yes.
I'm curious how you're doing with recruiting. You have such a wide range of skills that you need now for your team. How are
Yes.
things going?
It's a significant challenge. It's unimaginable again, as I think over my career, when I tested for different departments, it was not unusual to have 600 or 800 people come to apply to take a test. And the way our hiring process works, it's multi-step. First off, you fill out an application, you can get that done. We have a written test that tests your reading and comprehension, not necessarily associated with fires, but reading and comprehension. There's a physical aptitude test that's been standardized now. And then when you get those scores, you go on an eligibility list, which is good for 2 years. There's an interview process and background checks and psychological exam. That's the part that really scares me, is the psychological test. Because when I look around the table at the firehouse, we're the ones who passed. That really, I'm uncomfortable with that, but that's what it is. So it is a challenge. And it's not just a challenge in this area, it's a challenge from coast to coast. And again, I just met with several hundred fire chiefs, and everybody's having the same challenge. There were some municipalities right in our area here who recently held a test, and the one had 35 people apply for the job. We were very fortunate, we just held a test as well. We had 150 who applied, and I think there were 125, 130 who completed the process and are on our list. But we tried to do things a little bit differently. It's a complicated, is it okay if I keep talking? I don't want to.
Another hour.
It's complicated in that we have a paramedic service, and our paramedic service here in the community is affiliated with the fire department. So as a prerequisite for your hiring, we want you to be a licensed paramedic in the state of Illinois. So we were having our testing process where you needed to be a licensed paramedic to take the test. Well, for this test, we switched that slightly, and you need to be a licensed paramedic to be hired. So someone who's in paramedic school right now has an extra year or so to complete paramedic school and can still be on our list and can still be hired down the road. So that was one change we made. Another change we made was the written test itself. You used to have to come to the high school, they'd get the whole cafeteria and hundreds of people would sit in there and take a written test in the Scantron with your number 2 pencil and everything. We opened that up this year to be a virtual test. You can take that test online, and you can take it from anywhere. You registered for the test, you had a 3-day period by which you got a code that you entered into your computer, whether you're at home or work or vacation, wherever you were. Once you started the test, you needed to finish it, but we opened it up that way, and the test was available for several days. And we hire a contract agency professionals to do this. So we think that helped us as well. But some of the other things we look at is, yes, we had 150 take our test, but some of the restrictions that we have when in hiring paramedics, it's good for the community in one way, because it's extremely expensive to send somebody to paramedic school. So if I hire you off the street, we have to send you to EMT school first, you have to pass EMT school, then you go to paramedic school after that. You have to pass that, do all the practicals, do your time in the hospital, ride time in the ambulance, everything that goes with it. If we hire you today, we probably won't see you in our firehouse for 1.5 years. And we're paying you all that time, but we're not getting anything back in that amount of time. So that's one perspective that we have, which is why we have the paramedic hiring requirement in there, because it saves time and money for the community. Unfortunately, what that also does is it restricts our hiring pool. And as we look at our efforts to be better in our diversity and equity and inclusion, that doesn't always include people who may have challenges in achieving a paramedic license. So we exclude a certain portion of the population by those hiring requirements. And it's an interesting balance that we try to strike on that so that we can have a pool of candidates that truly is diverse, while also respecting the financial needs and the operational needs of the community. So it's an interesting situation. But we are challenged in our hiring process from coast to coast. It is absolutely something that's a topic of conversation. Less people are going to paramedic school, and one of the contributing factors with that is paramedic school has become a quite lengthy process, and it's very complicated. And some folks are looking at, well, if I'm going to spend that much time in paramedic school, I can go a little bit longer and be a physician's assistant. And I have more opportunity for employment, different employment, if I do that. We've had people come through the process and get ready to be hired, and you know what, I don't really like working nights or weekends. You didn't know we work nights and weekends when you applied, you know? No surprise, but, and again, you can't make these things up. I don't really want to work nights or weekends or holidays.
Chief Michael, they can't be entrepreneurs.
You cannot, right, that's right.
If
It never stops when you're not.
Never stops.
So yes, we do have challenges. We're trying to strike the right balance with them. Yes, anybody else?
Is there anything you could think of how maybe manufacturers could help with the fire department as far as equipment, anything like that? I mean, as far as anything that your group is thinking of to have made for your needs that could help benefit fire department in any way?
Well, we're very fortunate here that we have a very good supply of equipment. But some of the things that we buy tend to be ridiculously expensive, I think. And when I look at a manufacturing community like this, and if I want to buy a nozzle for the end of a hose, it's really quite simple, you know. The threads that go on to the, you know, we call them the female coupling, the male coupling. 7.5 threads per inch, national standard coupling to make that. That's not scientific, it's not proprietary, it's not anything. Anybody can do that. And anybody can take that piece of brass or pyrolite, or we don't use brass very much for nozzles anymore, but that lighter material, and formulate that nozzle. And I'd like to think that we could probably make them here, that someone in this community could manufacture those for us for a whole lot less than what we pay when we buy them in the retail market. So it would take some work to do that and see if we could make it. But if you can make a pipe, and if you can make a faucet, and if you can make anything else, basically it's a pipe with a shove off on it. Can't imagine that we couldn't make them for a more reasonable price and buy them right here in our own community. So things like that, you know, there's some opportunities there.
Okay. I'll be talking with you afterwards.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You'll bear with me 1 second. We need to power back up because there's some big announcement that Chief Michael and I have. You know, I want this picture that's on my screensaver to come up. It is so beautiful. It's like out of Hollywood. Don't we need tulips?
We need tulips this time of year?
And I was telling a story about the location study from KLM, Dutch Airlines, Royal Dutch Airlines. And is that open? I hope.
It's coming.
Yeah, there you go. And they were saying that when they came to Chicago for 2 weeks, then went to Atlanta for 2 weeks, here in Chicago, nobody asked them any questions about life in the Netherlands or anything at all. They got off the plane in Hartsfield Airport in Atlanta. They weren't off the plane before somebody said, "How do you grow all those tulips? Do people really wear wooden shoes?" And that southern hospitality down there caused that location study to put a $4 billion piece of business in Hartsfield instead of O'Hare. So, but you never know what tulips might bring. All right, so let me log on here. This will only take a second or two, but this is important.
important piece of our evening together. You met that guy. All right, without overstating the obvious, that when you listen to Chief Mikel speak, what he was demonstrating for you is how people think, how they think while they're putting out a fire, how they think when they're analyzing risk, doing risk assessment. And we all need, and I'll just say this really quickly, we can talk about this quite some time, but as we talk with our employees or talk with our customers, try to remember to say the word think, thought, we thought. Just to remind people that behind your recommendation for them is thought. And the more you're involved here, it'll be more thoroughly thought. But the fact is, we need to remind people that what they're doing requires thought, requires thinking. And we don't use the word. We'll tell the story. Fortunately, Chief Mikel used it quite often. We were thinking about this, we were thinking about that. But what you don't realize is the neuroscience, when you hear the word think, it actually causes the people who hear the word to get more engaged. So use the word think, write the word think in your newspaper. It's a really important thing to put in there. So each catastrophe involving public safety, whether it's something as extraordinary as what the state of California has gone through, but it causes all of us to have ideas. So the good question that was asked, is there anything that manufacturers could do? I'd rephrase the question and say, is there anything that a manufacturer could think of that would be of interest, that would appeal to a fire department? So what we are happy to announce is the beginning stages of putting together a workplace safety idea awards program. And this is what's called an innovation challenge. And so for the remainder of this year, next couple of months, we're going to be putting the meat on the skeleton. I'm going to tell you what we have so far. So from January through July of next year, we're going to be asking all the businesses in Elk Grove Village to contribute any ideas that they might have for workplace safety, things inside their workplace. If they have an idea for outside of their workplace, great, submit it. But if in the thought process that we've developed here, is you're thinking about what you can control. What can I bring into my workplace to make this safer for my employees and for myself, for my customers? So this notion in this period of time, January through July, we're going to put together a panel of experts, fire chiefs from surrounding communities and possibly from a different state. What state was that you were telling me earlier about that gentleman?
Vermont.
Vermont. And we've already scheduled a meeting up in Vermont to do the assessment. So here's what we're going to do. There will be cash awards, and the amounts we'll announce in November, but we're looking for funds within a certain area of funding through the state. And so there'll be a first, second, and third place cash award. But we'll also provide consultation with an intellectual property attorney. And a few of you were here when we had an intellectual property attorney with a table behind him that resulted in his leaving everybody with a bottle of ranchada as we all walked out the door. Wasn't that a wonderful event? And he was supposed to be here tonight. I'm sorry that he's not. But if all goes well, he and his firm will be our intellectual property consultants. And consultation with partners to test any ideas that pop up, and 2 or more mentors to assess the marketability and the viability of an idea. A full year of free membership here where we will really prioritize making sure that the person who had the idea decides whether or not she or he wants to give the idea or sell the idea to somebody with more experience so that they remain a firefighter and they remain a plant manager or a dock worker, whatever they are doing where they're having these ideas for workplace safety. We're not trying to pluck people out and create entrepreneurs, but we are trying to instigate, initiate, and ignite entrepreneurial thinking and coaching, guidance, and other benefits when possible. So the idea is to really, as we have been trying to do for several years, is to get a more steady stream of dialogue between and among the elected officials, the educators, the fire safety professionals, and the business community. And you know, it's no surprise that here in Elk Grove Village there are roughly 33,000 residents, I believe, and another 70,000 people flow in and out of the village to come here to work. That's over 100,000 people that this village touches every day. And so surely among that 100,000 people there are ideas that could become products, that could become services, that could become global. So we're very excited about this. It has lots of potential, and each month that we're together from now on, we'll give you an update on more specifics about this. We'll tell you the names of the judges, but we wanted this particular group on this particular fourth anniversary of the building opening just to be the kickoff for this Ideas Awards program. So any questions about that? Q&R? Because I don't have all the answers, but I do have responses. So let me close with a couple things. Every one of you knows somebody who owns a business. COVID-19 is having a profound effect on our brains. Some of us are ignoring it. Some of us are pretending it's not happening. It is happening. I've seen the research. As I was telling somebody a few minutes ago, as I was coming downstairs, on my phone flashed a message from Harvard Business Review saying, "Are you depressed?" And I'm sure the article was geared to saying it's not depression, it's something else. Make sure that you reach out to somebody who's an entrepreneur running an organization of some kind and share some of the insights you've learned here. But remember to connect emotionally on a personal level. It's never been more important than during the COVID era. And as I think everyone in this room probably knows, this COVID era is going to be with us for years. Not to be taken lightly at all. And so the psychological impact will last much longer than the physical risk. So let's keep it in mind. Listen empathically for unspoken needs that somebody might have. A lot of people are awfully proud in our region, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, COVID had no effect on me whatsoever. My business is fine," and it may not be true. So you have to be really careful. Ask questions about the person before you ask questions about the company. We have a bad habit in our region of defaulting to questions about money, questions about sales, questions about property that's being expanded, or things of that nature. But ask about the person. Are you getting to see your kids enough? Are you getting home enough? Are you interacting with your faith community sufficiently? Ask about the venture second, and offer constructive input on both fronts. Don't just listen. Listen deeply, but offer what you can, because we all can. But be specific about the pandemic's impact on the person and the venture. Ask about the pandemic's lessons. A lot of people are saying right now they're learning things about themselves that they didn't know they had. You know, they're overcoming some things. They've lost loved ones, and they're keeping at it. They're just going through it. Many of us have lost parents and weren't able to say goodbye to them, as was in the case of my mother's death. And so these are very, very important moments. So introduce trusted resources. If you know somebody and you can introduce them, do so, please. And also provide warm sales leads, not cold sales leads. What I mean by that is pick up the phone and say you're going to be hearing from so-and-so, or do a three-way call, or do a Zoom connection or something. But do it warmly, not only because that increases the possibility that a relationship will result in revenue for the person that you're concerned about, but we all need connection. We need to reconnect. We need to gather better. And so gathering is becoming more of an art and a science because of COVID. Consider directly doing business. If you can do business with somebody, maybe their price is a little bit higher than going to Home Depot, but isn't it, there's a Chris Prochno's husband owns a
Edison building.
Yeah, absolutely. And so don't go to Home Depot. go to them. But here, let me just quickly say, suggest readings and courses. I don't know if you've been following Amazon's book recommendations, but they are coming out of the woodwork in terms of new books about leadership and leadership thinking. And one that just arrived, today that I had on pre-order. I've skimmed it enough to know that it's good, but it's another Maxwell book. I think this goes up to 98 books he has out there. And The Self-Aware Leader. Now, I am fairly certain, not knowing John Maxwell's history, that he probably didn't start this. I haven't done the research yet, but I'm going to check it, and if I'm wrong, I'll let you know. There's a high probability that he started this as COVID began, because he would know, based on his background, that the self-aware person is going to survive. The person who has limited understanding of self in terms of perseverance and things of that nature. But as many of you know, our Bible with a low B here is Think Again by Adam Grant. And if you haven't had the opportunity to either listen to it on audiobooks or read a review of the book, please get it. So when I was talking today with that Silicon Valley consultant that I mentioned earlier, I asked him if he has read Adam Grant. He said, read him, I've talked to him, I've met with him. And they've had meetings, and they're thinking about doing a book together. So he's quite remarkable. Adam Grant, as a number of leaders in that field, are following very closely what we post online and papers that we publish. So suggest good readings and courses, encourage Enclave membership. It's not a pitch for us as much as a pitch for the person with whom you're interacting. And discern other ways to be supportive. And some of you have heard me say before that help is a 4-letter word. So try to watch out for using the word help, because the brain doesn't respond very well historically. When you say, let me help you, the brain doesn't like that. Support, they love support. How can I assist? But help makes it sound like you're up here and the person you're supporting is down here, and that's not what your heart meant to say. I mean, you were being helpful, but the word help has some toxicity to it. Unless you're a firefighter or an emergency medical technician and you're helping somebody out of a burning car, they want to be helped. They really do. If they say, let me support you as you get out of that car, that's not going to work. So, and just a reminder to everybody that our library, Studio 75 on iTunes is phenomenal. I mean, there's some really good things. We're backed up. We have 3 or 4 podcasts that haven't been posted yet, and they will be. But really good stuff. And if you haven't heard Mayor Johnson's podcast, it's one of our better podcasts. Is the emotion that he put into the answers that were offered, the questions that were asked of Mayor Johnson, just brought out of him his very best. It was just outstanding to listen to his mind at work. Lastly, breathe. Please take care of your bodies. It is just a very difficult time. You don't even realize sometimes that you're breathing in a shallow fashion because of all the uncertainty, all the confusion, all the press cycles, the media cycles that we're going through. So be extra careful. If you have one of these Apple Watches or something similar to that, please go out of your way to allow yourself time to breathe. And remember, every Wednesday, every 3rd Wednesday of every month, we are here on the 17th of November. The topic is robotic machinery. And it's a CEO of a company, and I'm not mentioning the company or the name because he promised me the other day that he was going to be here and then did not reconfirm today. And I've learned not to announce it. But if all goes well, we'll have somebody that has been scheduled twice here, but because of health issues has been unable to keep the schedule. But his company manufactures remarkable robotic technology. So thank you for being here. And does anybody have any questions before we wrap up? Now, you are welcome to stay. If you haven't been in the building before, please take a tour. Just walk around on your own or ask somebody who's familiar with the building. There's lots of wine. Don't let me throw it away. Drink it, please. And cheese and good stuff like that. But please enjoy it. And in closing, let's give ourselves a round of applause. Thank you very much. Great to see you. Please stay and play ping pong if you'd like.